Hello everyone, and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry. This video is going to be all about the changes to Wyrmprints, what the deal is with Wyrmprints in general if you're a new player, what I would suggest you do with the Wyrmprint treasure trade, how to manage your Wyrmprints. This is my guide for Wyrmprints, and I wanted to get this out despite the excitement of the collaboration, as I think this is very important in setting yourself off on a good path in Dragalia Lost. Now that this is something that is completely up to our choice and the decisions we make, hopefully this guide will help you make some good decisions with respect to your Wyrmprints, get a good collection, and be able to use them effectively in battle. So I do want to just admire this title screen really quick, and of course we're going to come into the game and get to listen to that nice remix by Dowco. I love the attention to detail that's been put into this event, but we're not here to talk about that today, at least not in this video. I will come back to it. I have been working on the event and basically done everything except try the defensive battles so far. Like I said, we're here today to talk about Wyrmprints. Of course, you'll see on the Summon Showcase that now only adventurers and dragons appear, which, if you're new to the game, this is all you know, but this is a big change for existing players because Wyrmprints used to appear here. So now you'll find Wyrmprints here in the shop under this Wyrmprints tab. There are featured prints, 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars. Past seasonal prints are not back. Do be aware of that. So if you have some of those prints, hang on to them. But otherwise, basically everything other than past seasonal or event prints are in the shop here. And now a lot of these prints are being given as drops for quests. So I'll post a link in the description to a nice Reddit post that describes which quests drop which Wyrmprints, just so you're aware of what you can get from which quests. And I assume this is something that will get updated in the Gamepedia, the wiki, eventually as well. I haven't seen it there yet, but I know they're probably hard at work. There's been a lot of changes with this update. So that is how you acquire Wyrmprints now, is you trade Eldwater in this treasure trade, or you get them through quests, basically, and that's it. So as far as Wyrmprints go, they are in some ways the least important part of a character build. They provide the lowest amount of stats. However, it's really these passives, these abilities, that make them so important to building a character. They are essentially like inheritable skills or inheritable passives that you can swap. They're accessories that you can swap among your characters, and by building up one really good one, it gives you a pretty powerful tool with any character you want to bring into co-op, and the more of them you have, the stronger you can make your solo teams as well. So they are a very good thing and something to be aware of in Dragalia Lost if you're wondering what the deal is with them. Of course, you can equip them here on your team screen, and once you beat Chapter 4 of the game, you unlock the ability to equip 2 of them, which is great. It makes your unit stronger. It's a significant boost in power to your units. You can look at them here on your collection, and my first piece of advice, my first rule of thumb for you guys is this collection menu is where you can sell Wyrmprints. Any Wyrmprint which is 3-star or above, when you sell it, you are going to get Eldwater, which feeds into you being able to purchase other Wyrmprints from that treasure trade. So you can see here, if I were to sell this Wyrmprint, I get 1,000 Eldwater. That is pretty important, as I've seen a lot of people make this mistake. You don't want to fodder these Wyrmprints. If they're 3-star or above, you don't want to fodder them for level ups. That is a big waste because Eldwater is way more precious than a level up. A 2-star Wyrmprint like this one, no Eldwater, so those are okay to fodder for level ups. So I'll zoom in on this, you can see that it's a 2-star. You will get some of these as well, and this is probably the only 2-star print worth mentioning because this ability, Shapeshift Prep, is really good for raids and for certain speed clears of bosses. It stacks across teammates, so if everybody uses this, you can start off a quest with 40% of your dragon gauge full and get a dragon very quickly, or even more of it full in a raid and basically get a dragon immediately. So this was a really good print to hang on to as a 2-star, But now there are 3 and 4 star options you can get with no randomness, of course, from that shop that are better. So pretty much from this point on, I feel any 2-star Wyrmprints, I wouldn't sell them. I would use them as level up fodder. 3-star and above, if you don't want them, you want to sell them. You don't want to use them as level up fodder. And I'll just clarify what I mean by that. Here in the upgrade tab, Wyrmprints, if I were to click on this Wyrmprint that I have, I could go here and, spin this Wyrmprint to level it up. That would be a very bad idea because this is a 4-star and it's only leveling up a tiny amount. And I could get Eldwater out of that, which is way more precious. A 2-star, not really a big deal. I couldn't get Eldwater from that. I could just get rupees. Use those for fodder, that's fine. So that's my first piece of advice. Make sure you are aware of that. I see a lot of people make that mistake. And I will say, the upgrade materials for leveling up Wyrmprints are pretty scarce. You get a bunch of them from events, so that is the main way, that's the main resource where you'll get them. They're called Consecrated Waters or Blessed Waters, and we're going to get some through the retweet campaign that's been announced. So that is another good thing for you to level up and power up at least one really good Wyrmprint. I'll show you within the event where you can get them as well in the treasure trade. Basically, they look like this. This is the highest level, the gold level. And these are the ones that really put in work as far as leveling up a Wyrmprint. The bronze and silver kind of do a really small amount of level up, so just be aware of that. That's what you want to be using, and that's what you probably want to save, because even though all Wyrmprints are available to us, we are still somewhat limited by the income of this level up material. You still have to make a decision about which Wyrmprints you want to level up. The good thing is, leveling up is mainly about those stats. And like I said at the beginning of this video, Wyrmprints, their primary effect is not the stats per se, but the abilities they grant. So if you're brand new and you can't get your Wyrmprints to a high level, even if you can just fodder some 2-stars or use the waters that you have and get your Wyrmprint to level 10 or level 20 for now, that's going to be fine. That's still a pretty good boost, especially if the Wyrmprint you've chosen has good passives. So that's the second thing I want to say. Be aware of that level up. And here in the upgrade materials page, once you've been playing for a while and have the rupees to do this, like once you're playing on the harder Avenue to Fortune maps, for instance, which is the daily where you get gold or rupees, you can buy 3 of these per day, and it is worth it. You can also buy 3 dragon fruit per day for leveling up dragons, and that is worth it too if you're not aware of that. Okay, so we've talked about 2 stars versus 3 stars and up, and now we've also talked about where to get that level up material and how to spend it a little bit wisely. You don't want to go crazy and try level up all your prints because it's not really going to be possible if you want to build a full collection to level up everything. So do keep that in mind. But now let's go ahead and talk about the Wyrmprints themselves, and I'm going to say there are 2 approaches that you could take here. The first approach is what I would call a Pragmatist Approach. If you are more of a Pragmatist, with the exception of a select few 4 stars and 3 stars that you may want to keep, then I think what you might want to do is any 4 stars and 3 stars that you get from drops in quests, sell for Eldwater, and put that Eldwater and focus on just a few powerful 5-star prints that you can use across a variety of characters and that give you a sense of focus when you are spending that precious level up material. So that's one approach. That would be a more pragmatic approach because you don't get a lot of resources to just do whatever you want with a ton of Wyrmprints. Now, the second approach, and I kind of fall more into this category, is kind of a collector approach or a collector mentality where you want to keep some of these 4-star Wyrmprints that you just happen to have or happen to get as drops, and the same with 3-star Wyrmprints in some cases. So if you feel that way, if you feel some attachment to some of these 4 stars and want to hang on to them, I don't think that's necessarily a bad idea because you could always want them down the road. Pretty much, with a few exceptions, there are a lot of these 4-star Wyrmprints that have a use. Pretty much all of them have some type of use. The 3 stars, though, not so much. So we'll get into the specifics of that, but that's what I would say is maybe make a plan. Do you want to collect all the Wyrmprints and see their artwork? Is that a goal that you have? Or are you somebody who more wants to focus on a few powerful prints that you can use on your best characters or a variety of characters and take them to any type of quest. That is one thing to think about. I think that most people fall somewhere in the middle. I know I do, so just keep that in mind that it is going to be hard to do everything to have your cake and eat it too, unless you're summoning a ton and as a result, getting a lot of Eldswater. So basically, as far as cost goes, if you're starting from scratch on these prints, for a 5-star, it's going to cost you 37,000 Eldswater to max unbind it from scratch. For a 4-star, it's going to cost you basically 17,000 Eldswater. And for a 3-star, it's going to cost you 1,700 Eldswater. So it's expensive, and there is a choice being made here because the other use of Eldswater that we have, of course, on the upgrade tab, is that we use Eldswater to promote adventurers. So let's say that I really want to promote Dragalia Nefaria. She's a 4-star, so that's going to cost 25,000 Eldswater to promote her to a 5-star, where she can unlock a 3rd ability, where she can upgrade one of her skills, and where she gets a stat boost. So that is a decision that you have to make, and for 3 stars, it costs 2,500 to make them into a 4-star. So if you want to take a 3-star all the way up to 5-star, it's going to cost you 27,500, basically. The other way that you spend Eldswater, though, is once you have a character that is maxed out, essentially, or at a 5-star level and in the final ring of their mana circle, which is basically like a skill tree, there are these co-ability upgrades. And co-ability upgrades also cost Eldswater, and look, it's pretty expensive here, so that is a very pricey use of Eldswater. The good thing is, as of this update, all characters, 3-star, 4-star, and 5-star, once you start to upgrade these, all of them end up in the same place. They all have a high level of co-ability if it is fully upgraded. So that is another consideration, is if you want to max out a character or 50 node a character, which is what it means to fill their skill tree or finish their skill tree, basically their mana tree or mana circles, then that's going to cost you over 70,000 Eldswater. And if they were a 4-star or 3-star to begin with, you're looking close to 100,000 Eldswater at that point. So that is a decision you also have to make is, do I want to spend this on my favorite character or to get a Wyrmprint? And because of that, I think you want to probably be a little conservative, not go crazy and just buy every Wyrmprint off the bat. Alright, so now that we kind of have the basics out of the way as far as Wyrmprints go, I'm going to talk about some of the specifics, but remember the golden rule in Dragalia Lost. Build whoever you want, buy whatever Wyrmprints you want, do what you want, it's your game, enjoy it, but I am going to be talking more from a strategy standpoint. So if you just want a Wyrmprint for the artwork, if you just want to promote a character because you like them, it's okay to do that in this game. Just remember that. Of course, that should apply to any game that you play. It's about the fun. So I'm going to talk strategy, but that is the golden rule that does trump what I'm about to say. So as far as 3-star Wyrmprints go, the one that really stands out is Bellathorna. This is pretty much the only 3-star print that I would buy, basically because this buff time ability isn't seen on a higher rarity print, and it is a great complement to characters like Elisanne, who you get for free through the story, who have a primary skill that provides a buff. Even some characters who have a quick to charge secondary skill can make use of this, as buffs are pretty strong in Dragalia Lost, especially if they're on a quick cooldown. So Elisanne, for instance, can pretty much have no downtime on that strength buff she provides to her team, and with Bellathorna, you can easily overlap multiple instances of that buff. So that's the reason why this print is good. It's basically because there's not a better option at a higher rarity. Any of the other 3-star prints, I would just recommend that you sell for Eldswater unless you really want to collect them. Now for 4-star prints, I'm going to skip over any prints that I think aren't worth talking about or don't really bring a whole lot to the table. And really I'm going to focus on 3 specific Wyrmprints and then 1 category of Wyrmprints as well. So the specific Wyrmprints I want to talk about are King's Countenance. King's Countenance, because of the shapeshift prep, is a go-to option for raids. It's even used in endgame battles, especially High Mercury, because you want to make sure you have a dragon available at certain points. This is a good ability for niche clears or speed clears, and it's one of the best abilities when you just don't know what to put on a character. Especially because this stacks across teammates, you can get up to 40% prep at the start of a match and do some kind of crazy shenanigans with a Wyrmprint like this. The curse res isn't bad either. It means that for a 3-star character you like, or a 4-star like Luca, you could bring them up to 100% curse res through this one Wyrmprint alone. So that's kind of why I like King's Countenance. The next print that I like is Together We Stand. The deal with Together We Stand is it has this Striker Strength ability. A lot of content in Dragalia Lost has you face off against waves of enemies. You see that in facility events. You see that in the new defensive battles. And even in a lot of dailies and other types of content that you'll do, like Imperial Onslaught, you fight a lot of enemies, and this powers up a character by 5% for every 3 enemies defeated with 4 strikes. It's not going to be good when you're going up against one boss, but if you're facing waves leading up to that boss, then it is very good. And so that's the main reason I like Together We Stand, and the fact that it has skill damage as the secondary ability is also great. So next up, I'm going to mention Fresh Perspective. In my opinion, this Wyrmprint has gotten a bit worse, but the main reason this was appealing to a lot of players is this combination of Force Strike and skill damage was not available on a 5-star print, and still is not available on a 5-star print. What's changed is that now you can easily combine any 2 5-star prints that you want for your build, because they're all available in the shop. So availability no longer being an issue, that means I'm not as crazy about this, because you can get higher amounts for both of these from a 5-star, but if you're just starting off and happen to get this as a random drop, or only have the resources to just get a copy of this, this is going to be a good print for your melee characters, your sword characters, especially like Alphonse or Yuden, because they rely on 4 strikes to break bosses quickly and deal effective damage. Not effective as in special against something, but just to deal damage effectively in general. It's a good part of their attacking sequence to use 4 strikes. So this was a good print for that reason. Even if I'm not crazy about it now, I think it still has a lot of merit. Now the other category of prints that I want to talk about at 4-star are prints that provide affliction or elemental resistance. So you see a cycle of these like Promises in the Rain, Fireside Gathering, Trove of Knowledge, and Castaway's Journal. And basically the deal with these is, I would not invest in them right away, but if you decide there's a character you really like, who is a 3-star or a 4-star, who doesn't have 100% affliction resistance in their kit, then this is a good option to patch them up. But I would only buy these prints once you've kind of come to that conclusion that, hey, I love Elisanne, but she only has 50% burn res. Let me max out this print so I can get my Elisanne up to 100% and give her an easier time in an endgame battle like against Hilda. So that is the main motivation for using these, is basically for preferred characters that you really want to bring to their full potential. I wouldn't just buy them at random, as they're not going to be that important to you if you're just slapping them on characters for general types of content. Now, I will give a shout out to the elemental res as well on a print like Lord of the Skies. So this one differs in that it can't patch up an affliction, but elemental res as a secondary effect is kind of good, and the reason is, for harder battles, High Midgard Sormer and High Brunhilde in particular, less so High Mercury, they start off, those High Dragon Trials start off with an unavoidable attack. And a lot of the builds that you make for that fight are designed around surviving that attack and then getting to participate in the battle. So when Elemental Res is a secondary effect on another good ability, with another good ability, it's not bad to have. And what I'm going to do is post a link. There is a really nice build site, unit builder site by Junliko, and they have a check in there where you can go to different dungeons and you can see, does this build survive against this fight? Now, I'm not sure if it'll be updated by the time I post with the enhanced effects of these Wyrmprints, because all Wyrmprints have become stronger as of this update, as of today, so we're still relearning what the exact values on them are. But that would be a good thing to do, is if you say, hey, I want to take part in this fight, but I may not have enough resistance, I may not have enough HP or defense to survive, would a print like that be enough to put me over the limit and give me a nice secondary effect? Of course, I point that out at 4-star, but really where I think it starts to matter the most is at 5-star, as we have some really strong prints here like Flash of Genius with 10% wind res. You could probably run this on a melee character for High Midgard Stormer and not even need the Glorious Tempest Wyrmprint, which is specific for fighting that battle. So that really opens up some options where you can get a good resistance and a good attack at the same time, or good attacking ability or damage dealing ability. So the Wyrmprints I'd point out at 5-star that kind of fit into this category are Flash of Genius and Lucas Prank, because it has light res, and Crystallian Envoy with its flame res. Very good. This is a very good print to fight High Brunhilde, because she does deal a lot of damage. Defense is pretty helpful in that fight, and it also gives you that high amount of strength. This is great for Lily, for instance. So those are pretty good because of that. And Dragon and Tamer also has Shatter Res, but this Wyrmprint is only really great on Lance units because it has skill damage of 40%. Which brings me to my next point. Any of these weapon-specific Wyrmprints that have skill damage of 40%, they're hitting the cap in one Wyrmprint slot for skill damage, which is awesome on attacking units. That's pretty much the best ability for most attacking units, especially attacking units who have multiple skills that deal damage. That is the best ability that you want to make sure you have on them. So for lances right now, for axes, for swords, and for bows, we have these specialty prints that if you choose to invest in these, this is basically going to be the best in class or best in slot print that you can have for your primary slot to get that maximum amount of skill damage on those characters. The ones that are the best for sure are the bow and the sword Wyrmprint, because the secondary abilities here are pretty universally at least decent, they're at least applicable. Right now, Dragon and Tamer, that Shadow Res is more specific, so this is kind of the worst one, but in some ways, you know, it'll become better. Once we have a really hard shadow enemy that we're trying to fight, it would be a little bit better. Kung Fu Masters is also an exception in that it doesn't actually hit the skill damage cap, but in exchange, you're getting a ton of critical rate. So all of these weapon-specific Wyrmprints are good, and the one I would suggest maybe investing in if you're a newer player is the Shining Overlord. Basically because, you know, you're starting off, you have your Yuden, he's a sword. You're going to have your Alphonse, he's a sword character. Maybe you'll summon Marth if you're lucky. But basically, there are a lot of sword characters, and almost all of them work well with this. A lot of them have multiple attacking skills. This is a very strong Wyrmprint, so that's kind of the one that I think is the standout. Now, because of this, because of the existence of these prints that provide a maximum amount of skill damage, any other print here that provides skill damage, I am a little bit skeptical on, as I think it's become kind of outclassed. So you can see here, Valiant Crown. This was one of the best prints in the game, and I still think it's a very good print. But if you ask me whether you should invest in this, I would honestly say maybe not. Maybe not, just because we can expect that we're going to get more weapon-specific Wyrmprints in the future. That's a trend that they've been filling out. And so by spending a ton of resources to max unbind this and level it up, only to find that there's a weapon print for, say, a dagger character that you wanted to use this on that gives them more skill damage, I think that would be a bit disappointing. So for the time being, I would put a pause on Valiant Crown and even on Lucas Prank, although that has a good secondary effect. On Tough Love in general only provides a smaller amount of skill damage, so this one wasn't really great anyway. And on Resounding Rendition, as good as this print once was, and it still is, you know, on a lot of characters, it still is a very good print. I would probably put a pause on it just because this isn't hitting the skill damage cap in one Wyrmprint. Now, if you really want to rush and you want to build a certain character who doesn't have a weapon print yet and bring them to their strongest right now, you could heavily invest in this, and this would probably be your best skill damage or attacking option in general because it provides a lot of critical rate for those types of characters. So if you're trying to build a dagger, if you're trying to build, say, a wand character, this is probably going to be one of the best prints for them right now. But I would just wait, to be honest. Some of the other prints here that I think are worth pointing out for attackers: Stellar Show. Any attacker that wants to use Force Strikes like a sword character, probably best in slot or best in class for Force Strike damage. It hits the maximum among both Wyrmprints with just one print. And this critical damage only really matters a lot if the character has a higher critical rate somehow through their co-ability, through their dragon, through your teammates' co-abilities. However, it's kind of a secondary effect. That's not the main reason I see the appeal in this Wyrmprint. So that's what I think about Stellar Show. As far as the other Wyrmprints, let's see if anything else stands out. I really don't think anything else stands out right now, except for maybe Levin's Champion. So Levin's Champion is, once you get that first print on your attacker with that 40% skill damage, this is basically the best secondary print for them because it doesn't overlap at all and it's very synergistic with itself. It gives a character a higher critical rate and it gives them higher critical damage. So this is one of the ones I would say maybe do invest in now because it is pretty universal. If you want to build a wand character even and you don't have that wand skill damage Wyrmprint available yet, I would say start building up your Levin's Champion. It could be a good secondary print for them. But do bear in mind, things may change in the future. You might need a resistance print or something like that. Otherwise, though, I don't think any of these prints are exceptionally good. I will give a mention to, some of these prints, like a Solitary Light, have an Affliction Guard that can protect you and is kind of good at one copy. So is the Fleeting Girl. These might be good with just one copy for survival and auto battle against Imperial Onslaught. But I don't know that I would spin the Elswater just for that. Warrior Maiden, kind of a mismatch of abilities. Used to be pretty good because Slayer Strength was exclusive to it at 5-star, but our new print with Alphonse and Fjorm has that. Heavenly Holiday, not needed for anything right now, so I wouldn't buy this or invest in this, even though this could be good for High Zodiarch one day. Not needed right now, wouldn't get it. Gale of Beauty, Dragon Time, and Broken Punisher, not great effects unless you're going for like a speed clear of something. Gentle Winds and Jewels of the Sun, these are pretty good. These are actually worth considering, and it's not something I'd mentioned before. Gentle Winds is very good for Lowen in High Mercury, and especially if you want to use his 5-star Wind Staff, it's very good for him because it brings him up to 100% skill prep and it gives him a lot of strength, which he's going to need for that fight. Jewels of the Sun, like Levin's Champion, is another print that you could pretty much put on anyone and have it be pretty good. It gives you a nice amount of strength when your HP is above 70%, which is fairly easy to maintain, and it gives you the skill haste as well. Now at 8%, it starts to add up. It's not going to be amazing. It's not necessarily going to make a difference depending on your character and how their skills charge up over time, but it's not a bad effect to have. By no means is it a negative. These other prints like Cleo's Ruse, Give Me Your Wounded, and Auspex's Prayer that focus on healing, if you had to pick one, I would probably pick Give Me Your Wounded right now. It has this universally applicable recovery potency with no HP conditions, and this is a pretty good ability as a secondary ability for meme strategies, for cheesing the entry requirements for High Dragon Trials to survive an opening blast, so I think that's probably the best one of them right now. Night Stalker, it's one of the few sources of freeze res, and it does have that cap for 4-strike damage, but unfortunately I think Stellar Show is just better. Dragon Brethren, once again, Dragon Time, not great. Flame Res is okay. Worthy Rivals, wouldn't touch this. Broken Punisher, enemies are only broken for a very short time. Skill prep, it only goes up to 25%. It's not that great. Evening of Luxury is actually strong, but you have to make sure you're at full HP. And if you're not, then this is kind of a useless Wyrmprint. So these full HP prints like Evening of Luxury and Auspex's Prayer are good to set on helpers though. So that is one thing to think about for helpers, but I would suggest that for the most part you prioritize prints that actually matter to you and your units, not necessarily to your helpers, because your helpers are probably going to be good enough for your teammates, and it is expensive to spend water to level up these prints to have them on your helper and have them be pretty effective. So that's pretty much what I want to say about all of the Wyrmprints. I hope that you've enjoyed that rundown. Pretty much my view is those weapon prints are the ones to go for. And as a secondary print, something like Jewels of the Sun or Levin's Champion are a safe investment. Now, for the featured prints, I also want to add, you see here we have the Heroes Arrive and a Brief Repose, but before you start to spend your Eldwater on these, you're going to want to wait until at least May 3rd. And I say that because in the treasure trade coming up, you can see here that we have the Heroes Arrive. So if you can get this for free without spending any Eldwater, you should definitely wait and do so. And possibly after you redeem this one copy, there will be 4 more copies to redeem for free. Otherwise, whenever future events come out, you're going to want to check any featured prints here that are limited, have a deadline. Do you need to buy them, or can you just get them for free by playing the event? It is going to be good to have a stockpile of 40,000 or so Eldwater for future limited prints. You could always get one copy and unbind it later if they're limited. That's the last thing I should add is when it comes to unbinding prints, we do have this universal unbinding material, Golden Key, that can unbind a 5-star Wyrmprint by one stage, and we have a 4-star Silver Key as well. Now that this change has taken place, my suggestion is always save those for seasonal prints. Seasonal prints are a limited time, you don't know when they're going to come back. All the prints that are in the shop are going to stay there, and you can just save up Eldwater to unbind them. So honestly, you could go one of 2 ways. You could use your keys to save Eldwater on those last few copies because the purchasing cost increases, or I think the strategy I'd recommend for most people, save those keys for time-limited prints. You are going to save some Eldwater if you use them for redeeming the last few copies, or instead of redeeming the last few copies, but in general, I think it's going to be better to hang on to them. Alright, so that was a mouthful about all of the Wyrmprints, but I hope you've enjoyed this guide. I hope this helps you make some good decisions when it comes to which Wyrmprints to invest in, if you are thinking more strategically. And if you're brand new, honestly, I would say just hang on to the 4 stars and above that you get. Try them out, equip them to your characters, see what you like, see what's working for you, and just wait before you decide what you want to build or what you want to purchase. You might find that one of the characters you happen to summon ends up being your favorite, and then you want to really go for a Wyrmprint that benefits them. So that's all I want to say for this video, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. More content to come on defensive battles. I haven't tried those out yet. On the banner, and of course, my own summoning session. So take care, everyone, and I'll see you next time.